Yeah, it's not a break time. Yes. Okay, guys, let's get started. We are already running a little bit over. So this session is about hybrid deployments with the focus on the retail store scale unit. I am Abhi Ratnavelu. I'm a program manager with the retail team, and I have Jared with me, who is also the program manager. We both worked on this feature, and this was released in the. Can you hear me? No, not yet. Okay. Should I? Okay. Is it any better? Okay. Okay. So you're good? Okay. I'll try to kind of adjust my position so that it's better for you guys. So, yeah, so I was saying the retail store scale unit. So let me just start with a small background about this. So we released the GA version like almost, like a year ago, and we had a lot of feedback from the customers. And we thought that was pretty exciting. Everything is on cloud, and everything is going to be seamless, and it's a lower TCO for the customer, and everything is going to be all good. But then we started talking to customers, and we really started knowing about the pain points customers face in terms of what they face in the stores, like the connectivity issues they face, the internet connection failures they have, and the worry they have about depending fully on a cloud solution. So that was very eye-opening for us. So this session actually hopes to cover what we have built to alleviate that pain point. So the overview will be, I'll be talking about a little bit about the customer feedback we have received and what is the value proposition we are having as part of this retail store scale unit solution. And we keep talking about this flexible deployment option. So I also want to talk a little bit about what are the various ways you can actually deploy in a store which will fit your needs. And Jared is going to take over and talk more about deeply about the retail store scale unit specifically about what is the architecture and what is going to be the deployment and what is the extensibility story there. So that is what we want to cover in this session. So let's start with the most important thing, which is basically our customers, right? And what are the pain points they are currently facing? So the retail store scale unit is basically targeted to this towards the customers who are having issues with the latency, who want to ensure business continuity, because they have bad internet connections or infrastructure challenges, so they cannot completely rely on a fully cloud solution. So that is basically our driving factor. So a very one of our customers, when we started talking to them, very interesting story. So we started talking to them, and we said, okay, we have this cloud solution, and you can just go on board. There is zero deployment, and everything is going to be fine. And they said, you know what? We are living. The customer is actually based out of Philippines, and he said there are 7,000 islands in Philippines, and our stores are all over these islands, and the internet connectivity is one of the slowest in the world. And there is absolutely no way we can use this solution unless you give us the solution which can give them a business continuity. So that was and we heard a similar feedback from different customers who stated about the pain points in the store. So we have taken that action, and we have tried to build this retail store scale unit. The goal, again, as I said, they can use it in a situation where they cannot rely on a regular internet connectivity. They can still operate the store seamlessly. They can do the various operations they typically do in the store. And many people are just wanting to have it as a fail-safe option as well. So that's another set of people. So I really want to thank this audience, especially the folks who had been at this tech conference last year, because when we started the discussion, I reached out a lot of people, probably many of them are in this room. I had sent out a long survey and asked them to fill it, telling me that tell us what are the pain points you have, like give me feedback about what are the things you need in a in-store solution. So we do have customer evidence. It's not like we just thought about it and we built it. So we talked with you guys. So one of the key reasons was people wanted that cross-store, cross-terminal capability when they don't have headquarters connectivity. So that was one key thing which came up. And the other important thing is, of course, having the ability to do the end of the day operations without the store connectivity and doing the returns and all these things. All these features are enabled when you have an RSSU, especially the cross-terminal scenario. which will not be possible if you are depending directly on the cloud. But when you have the RSSU, you can have the cross-terminal scenario along with the business continuity and the reduced latency. So, and another important thing is, like, where I asked, like, how many people actually really want, how many of your customers actually would use a solution like this. I got an overwhelming 80% of people, 80% the partners responding saying that 80% of our customers would want something like this. So that kind of made the business sense for us to go and invest on it. And the key drivers, what are the key drivers they want this is definitely infrastructure issues, slow internet connections, frequent internet failures, and having different types of stores. There are people who are using our solution in moving stores like trucks or like pop-up stores and various things. They also find it very seamless for them to have a solution like this. So that is the reason why we have built this solution. And we are really hoping that it really addresses the pain points which you guys are facing with your customers. And to give an overview what it is, right? So the first thing, the important point here is it's one of the many options. So RSSU is a deployment choice. It's not like you have to do RSSU. If your customer is having a very stable internet connection and is totally fine with the zero footprint deployment, he can still have that option. So RSSU, as I told you again earlier, it is focused on certain type of customers who have those infrastructure challenges. So the store component, Jared will drive deep into the architecture, but at an overview, this is what it has. It has the retail store scale unit, which has the retail server, channel DB, Cloud Pass server, and the CDX async client for pushing the data. And you also have, the pretty cool thing what we have done here is we have also enabled a Cloud Pass for retail store scale unit. So what that means is you can operate the Cloud Pass without the headquarters connectivity. And we have the modern pass with the offline capabilities, and we also have the hardware station. Key values prop, as I told you earlier, symmetric architecture, the customizations are going to work seamlessly for you guys. And a flexible deployment. I'll be running through a different few sets of deployment options for you guys to consider, depending on what your needs of your customers and their condition. You can suggest that. And we also have added a new feature. It's a brand new feature. Probably ours is the retail is the only solution which currently has against the platform. This is the service-to-service authentication functionality which we have built, which is based on the AAD, which is the security standard for Microsoft, which will help the customers to be able to connect their RSSU to their headquarters without any certificates. They are pretty much the owner of their security. They can create their AAD secrets, and then they will be able to connect to the stores. So that's a very good value prop, especially with people are concerned about store security. You can say that, okay, this is a value prop you have with the AAD added to the mix, where in the past it has been mostly around all the security and secure communications have been handled through the certificates. And modern pass and cloud pass, as I said, both of them can operate within the store, interoperate. So that kind of brings up a lot of potential scenarios. There are customers who have told me that they want to use the cloud pass just for like order taking or clienteling with some cheap devices where the mobile devices people can move around. At the same time, they can also have a point of sale, and they both can interact with each other. All these things can happen now without the connectivity to the store if you have the RSSU solution. So coming back to the value proposition, again, the key things, providing the business continuity for our customers and having a reduced latency. As I said, the channel DB and retail server, they are going to be co-located. That is going to take the guesswork out of your performance issues. You are going to have everything within the store, and you are the master of what you are doing in the store. And we are enabling those cross-terminal scenarios without the HQ connectivity, which was not earlier possible without this solution. And browser-based Cloud Pass, which gives you the lightweight option, and also you have the resiliency of MPass with the offline option. So both of them are going to work together, and that's going to make the store operations very seamless. Flexible deployment options using the self-service package. In the past, you have noticed installation deployment used to be a nightmare with multiple issues. Jared did a fantastic job with the MPass installation. I'm sure many of you agree in terms of how seamless it has become now. We have taken that same theme, and then we have applied it into the RSSU as well. We decided that, okay, it should be so seamless that anybody can just take it and then run it, and it should work as long as they follow the instructions. So that has been our simplification, making it easy has been our theme for this project. We tried to do that in every possible way. we are looking for feedback. Wherever you guys are seeing pain points, do always reach out to us. We'll try to polish it and make it better. Service-to-service authentication, as I mentioned earlier, that's another key thing. So in terms of the general feature list, very similar, but these are the actual components what I talked about. The additional thing what I've listed here is the telemetry and diagnostics options, which you are able to track now along with this. We support the error handling and the real-time service support. Whenever there is a connectivity, there will be a seamless real-time service connectivity as well. So those are the key things over there. And in terms of the architecture options, we talked a lot about the flexible deployment options, and RSSU is one of those options. So what are the other options? So I will try to list out few such options for you guys. Some of you who are in the architecture section might have seen this earlier, but these are the options you can consider before you consider RSSU. If your customer, let's say if your customer is, let's take this particular option. This is a cloud-only option. What this means is a zero footprint at the store and a zero deployment at the store. So this is probably well suited for a customer who has a very stable internet connection, who is very confident that a typical downtime in the connectivity will not affect his business too much. So here the topology is like you have everything in the backend, the retail server, the cloud pass, the channel DB, all are hosted in the Azure. And in the store, you have only the cloud pass, which is running in the browser. And you can use the hardware. For the hardware, you can use the keyboard wedge, and you're ready to go. And it's like such a seamless, if you look at it, there is pretty much no starting time for getting the store up. You can set up a store in the headquarters. You can provide a device to the the store employees, and then they are ready to go with that device with their cloud pass and the keyboard wedge. And the other option is again the cloud only with the hardware station option. So the slight modification here is you still have the zero POS footprint and minimal deployment, but for the hardware handling, we have a shared remote. You have an option to have a shared remote hardware station. You can have the printers, cash dryers, payment terminals, all those things which can be set up. But the rest of the components can be part of the cloud. So this still gives you that same flexibility. At the same time, you are having these additional hardware options to take the payments or handle the transactions. So this is another option you have, depending on what your customer's need is. And then coming to the third one is cloud only with the hardware station and the offline capabilities. So there is a concern about resiliency, but at the same time, let's say the customer doesn't care much about cross-terminal scenarios. All he wants is, as long as the POS is not connected, I should be able to do a offline transaction. Then this is a good fit for them. In the backend, they can have the retail server, the cloud POS, and the channel database. All of them are hosted in the Azure. And the store, they can have both the cloud POS, which is running in the browser, and they also can have the MPOS app with the offline capabilities. And you guys, most of you would already noticed that the MPOS offline has become very, very seamless in the AX7. We are no longer using that SQL sync framework. Everything has become one single package. You install the self-service package, and you're ready to go. And so that will be another option for you guys to consider, and you will still have the hardware station for handling your printers, cash dryers, so on and so forth. Then the final one is what I told you. Again, the retail store scale unit. This is option for you when you have those needs. What I told you about, like the cross-terminal scenarios, having that full availability situation in your store. You have bad internet connections. You have latency requirements. So this is the other option for you, where all you have to do is get that self-service package, install the RSSU, and you will get the retail server, the local channel database, the cloud POS, the MPOS Windows app can be installed separately. But all this information, all this footprint can be put in the single store, and you can set up your hardware station also, and then you are ready to go. So this kind of sums up the various options you have in terms of deployment. And RSSU definitely was that missing link for us when we came out GA. We have tried to, this feature is already available in fall. People are trying it out and giving feedback. People are implementing it. If your customers or if you're looking into it, and if you're having any issues facing, if you have any suggestions, always feel free to reach out to us. With that, I'm just going to transition into the next layer of RSSU, going deep into what RSSU is, what is going to be the architecture, how does the self-service work. So Jared worked on the self-service. He's going to come and talk more about that. Thank you, guys. Yeah, sure.
has multiple stores in it,
Mm-hmm.
and you have multiple store databases running off that same RSSU, or do you have to have one RSSU per store database?
So that's a great question. So retail server is stateless. So in that sense, it effectively acts as a pass-through with the point of sale actually knowing kind of where to go and such like that. The retail server does get that connection string to say this is the channel database I typically talk to, but that's not to say that it couldn't have multiple channel databases potentially. It would be kind of some manual work involved, but it is possible.
What about the scenario where you put the scale unit in the cloud as well? So you
Yeah.
get a latency problem by putting it locally in the region and then but everything in the cloud.
It's same concept. I mean, you can... Pardon? Yes, good. Thank you. The question was, what happens if you take an RSSU, a retail store scale unit, and you actually place it in the cloud? So you get a VM and you install it there instead. The answer is yes, you most certainly can do that. There will be some manual steps on that virtual machine to be able to have the connectivity externally, obviously, but certainly doable. I believe Yabin has also spoken about the retail cloud scale unit and when that's coming. So that's the other piece of that, which effectively automates that concept, where instead you just order up another cloud scale unit and boom.
You should be looking at retail, the RCSU as we call it, the retail cloud scale unit for those kind of scenarios, and that is something which we are currently working on, probably post-spring. Okay.
So let's talk about self-service, shall we? And this was me just wasting my time, but this is what you don't want. You don't want a bunch of people sitting in a line waiting at a point of sale for no particular reason because something has gone terribly wrong. You want the happy thing, despite his lack of potential knowledge about shirts. We'll talk about that later, but the end result is you got happy people, you got quick transactions, you got motion control via mobile, all that fun stuff. Let's jump into it. So architecture, and I'm sure some of you have seen this slide if you guys went to the servicing and diagnostics and such. When you get an environment, this is what you get. That kind of basic back-end piece that has your fun, lovely load balancing and all that. Here's what you could have at GA, which was your brick-and-mortar store, Cloud POS, MPOS, maybe some hardware stations. Now we get, along with consumer app, has anybody tried the retail experience app? Yeah, a few people in here? Awesome. Side point. The new thing, the brick and mortar store with the retail store scale unit. So we deploy those 4 components, and it could be on one or multiple boxes, which I'll go into, which will allow you to have modern point of sale or cloud point of sale, hardware station, all functioning on premises or however you so decide to make that deployment. The comment's been made about potentially multiple channel databases, potentially data centers, always options. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's go into the deployment. At a high level, here's your steps. So hopefully, most of you, if not all, who have used RSSU have gone to the wiki. Who's gone to the wiki, first off? Beautiful. Thank you. Awesome. Please, use the wiki. If you don't like the wiki, make a comment about the wiki. I love to update the wiki. I talk wiki day and night. It's wonderful. I'm sure you guys have heard. Overarchingly, the way we try to keep it is you should always do your configuration first, and then you should do your installation. So your configuration is all of your AX stuff, all of your Azure stuff, and then you get into the installer and start doing your specific pieces, which I'll go into. But at a high level, here's what you see. So starting off, Azure. So in Azure, you are going to create new web applications. These web applications will give you a client ID and a secret. Obviously, I have blocked these out because I actually still use this. But the end result is the same. What this ends up being is a retail store scale unit instance. And what ends up happening then is you will place this into your environment. So in your environment, the Azure Active Directory applications page, this should have a listing for every store that has a retail store scale unit. So every instance of your installation will be a line. The reason we do this is for security purposes. Because what you don't want is to have one key across all stores. You do that, and if somebody ever gets a hold of it, you're in a very bad position. As opposed to one key per, you can just turn it off. And stop me as I go. Don't feel I got to keep running. So let's get into the installer. Obviously, it's not one size fits all. So you may or may not have multi-box. We prefer one box. And again, read the wiki. I'll say that over and over. Nowadays, as opposed to 2012 R3, boxes are getting stronger and stronger. You're starting to see systems with 8 gigs of RAM minimum. And that's actually a potential system now for a few registers. That's not a big deal. So in that sense, one box is absolutely an opportunity, absolutely available. Otherwise, your data centers, otherwise your servers, etc., certainly doable. I would love to talk all day about it. I think that's a side conversation. Pick me up afterwards. So I'm going to start with one box, and then I'll talk about multi-box. So next, I'm going to run through these steps. If you guys don't know, you will have a configuration file. The configuration file is required when you run this installer. It is required because it minimizes how much work you have to do. Things like this. Excuse me. The button has messed with me. AOS URL, pretty straightforward. Again, it'll be automatically entered. This is just the AOS URL that you will enter to actually access your environment. We do the rest in the background. Your certificate, and this seems to be a big piece for a lot of people. Your certificate is critical. It is an IIS site. There is nothing we can get around on that. It requires a certificate. It must be trusted. So in that sense, we've tried to do what we can to make it easy to put in. No more thumbprints. Just pick it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It is my pleasure. Trust me, it was more for my benefit than yours. That said, personal, you see a nice, lovely list of other things. Obviously, it can't be expired.
Can you find a way to document the requirements for that certificate that if in store you wanted 5 files on an iPad, that it would actually work with that certificate? Because the standardized certificate will not work with an iPad.
With iOS. So the comment made was that your standard certificate will not work on an iOS device. And you're absolutely correct. iOS hates especially self-signed certificates. Even some of the trusted certs it has trouble with and doesn't like. You're absolutely right. And we've just started jumping into the iOS and Android spaces with Cloud Point of Sale. It's a known issue, and I guarantee you we're working on it. Yep. Big things. I agree. So let's talk users for a moment. You have multiple IIS sites. You have a web application, a system service, which is the async client. All of these things need service accounts. So it doesn't have to be a service account, obviously, especially in a domain scenario. You probably have all sorts of fun accounts already prepared. So we've made it optional. By default, we'll generate a service account. That way you don't have to worry about it. Nobody cares. If you need that account to be specified, specify it. Done. Nice and easy. If you choose service account every time you run this installer, it will actually regenerate and clean out the password. So if ever you're worried that something has gone wrong, that there's some sort of security issue, that I just don't know what's happening, just rerun the installer. It's idempotent. It's upgradable. We don't care. Same thing for your client Windows service. So we've separated out async client against the IIS site for these two ones, your application pool versus your async client. We did that so that you wouldn't have to worry about the multi-box scenario. Again, specific or not, your choice. So anybody want to speed up on this? Or are we doing okay? One guy? All right. We'll go a little faster, but we'll see how it goes. Moving forward, port, username, these things will be automatic from the configuration file. Once again, the host name is actually pulled when the installer starts up. So if you have some sort of magical host name alterations, et cetera, you might want to actually change that value. 99.9% of the time, I'm betting that's never going to change. We also will automatically create a firewall rule, if anybody has a question about that. Okay, now the meat. So two pieces. One is the client ID and secret. This is what I just talked to you about right at the start of this. You're going to create one per store. It's going to go here. If you end up doing multi-box, which I'll talk in a moment, it needs to be the same one on each box. At the bottom here, Retail Cloud Point of Sale configuration. What that does is it will ask you for Azure Active Directory credentials, which must be a Azure admin, I'm sorry to say. We're working on that one too. And that will actually generate the web applications necessary for Cloud Point of Sale to function. That is separate from the store client ID and password secret. Key on that. Okay. Here's what you see. Your package and your configuration file. Here's the end result. This guy, which I'll talk about in just a second, must be put back into operations. This is what ends up going when you configure Retail Cloud Point of Sale. This gets generated. It's a one-time concept. I'll talk about it more in a moment. Sure. What that's trying to say is that the Retail Cloud Point of Sale was used and configured to create two web applications, one for Retail Server and one for Cloud Point of Sale, so that they can properly talk to one another locally outside of operations. So it has a nice little client ID up here. That client ID needs to be added into operations, which you're going to see in another screen in just a second. So all that's saying on that is that you need to verify it exists. Quick validation. We do this every time you run the installer. Make this page your friend, okay? We have this beautiful button down here. It's awesome. Test connection. It's quick. It's easy. Everything you would do manually, we will do here. And of course, manual. If you want, these user URLs are phenomenal. They're very useful, even for environments. So you can actually have your retail server URL and add in health check, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Download the slides later. You'll see them. Run the installer. You'll see them. So this is what I was talking about. That cloud point of sale URL you got, this needs to go into retail shared parameters. You will select your identity provider. When you enter an Azure Active Directory credential, that is the URL that you are working against. It is typically sts.windows.net or something to that effect. When you select that, it will list your relying parties. Those relying parties need to have a new edition of that client ID that was generated at the end of the installer. Upon saving that, you will have server resource IDs. And I'm sorry, guys, in the back that it's so small. Again, download the presentation later or run the installer. The server resource ID, it's the same thing every time. You enter retailstorescaleunit.retailserver.com. That is our Azure backend that is used for redirection. This is a one-time data entry. So that means that you guys, especially as partners, especially as people who are IT or in some form going to be setting this up, you can actually do all this work. You can do roughly 80% of everything I just said before the customer ever needs it and get that environment ready. That will make it so all they have to do is run the installer in store.
So is it not a client ID for Scale Unit? It's just...
So it is a client ID from the client ID and secret perspective, because the secret is the big key. But from the perspective of this retail shared parameters, it's strictly a one-time concept to make cloud point of sale function.
Across multiple units.
Across multiple. So what happens is, every time you run the installer after the fact, you will get another entry in the same web application. Okay? Okay, sticky points. So, as I mentioned, you have to be an Azure subscription admin. So when it asks for Azure Active Directory credentials, it's sadly the way it is. I added a Tony Stark quote just because I'm a nerd. Security can cause secondary application issues. When you're testing this out especially, we lock down that box. We lock it down to only use TLS 1.2. 1.1, 1.0, SSL, all gets turned off. So it is very important. Oh, I don't have my box. It's very important that if you want to keep using your apps, you need to go into the registry and change them. We had a servicing and diagnostic talk yesterday that I showcase exactly what those are, or you can go to the wiki.
Will the wiki be presented at some point?
I really should have, yeah. This is the wiki, love it. Okay, all that said, like I mentioned, generate an Azure web application per channel. More than anything, that's a security concern. Multi-box setup. I won't go too deep into this, but I do want to get you guys' opinions first. How many people are even using Retail Store Scale Unit, trying it out, testing it, getting people saying they need it? A few? Okay, that's good. Of those, how many need multi-box? One. Literally one. That's what I thought. It's just not that important anymore. Boxes are getting too powerful. So I'll jump through this a little bit. There's a ton of text. I apologize. It's huge. The first box, you're going to install your channel database and async client. Do this first. That's what it comes down to. You're going to have to go into the SQL config manager. All of this is on the wiki. Okay? So no worries. You'll do some changes there, including encryption, including certificate. Make sure you get your name pipes and TCP IP open. Pretty standard in that sense. Obviously, your firewall. On your second box, you'll install Retail Server and may or may not install Retail Cloud Point of Sale. When you do that, obviously, your health check will not work the first time. Please don't email me, oh my God, I did multi-box. All right. At the end, find the connection strings for web.config, make some additions to that first system, keep going. That's what it boils down to. So let's talk extensibility for a minute, because that's the real key, right? You're going to extend pause. You're going to extend Retail Server. We are making changes. I'm sure most of you have heard it by now. Yeah? Hopefully. The goal is to minimize and cut out code merge. That's what it really boils down to. We've heard you guys time and time again. It is a nightmare every time you have to do a code merge from a hotfix. And we hear it, we know it, so we're working on it. Our goal is we want to seal off all the code for the retail channel side, and we want to separate out channel components from extended customizations, and then we want to simplify how you do the installations. That's what it comes down to. So let's talk right now, and I'll kind of jump through this. Those in the diagnostics talk, we'll talk about that, have seen this a little bit before. You get a cloud environment today. Your IT pro is going to go through LCS, going to take up your binary updates, set it into your asset library, push it through. It gets put onto the cloud environment first, and then it finally gets pushed to each client-side box. That's how it goes today. If you customize, it becomes even worse, because now, within your developer topology, you get to do all your lovely customizations. You get to pull down the binaries, do your lovely merge, and then push it back up, and again, the exact same flow over and over and over. My finger's tired. That's ridiculous. So the hope coming soon here, on the other hand, is you do the same concept in terms of taking up a binary and putting it in an asset library. This is your standard first-time install with vanilla. Boom, done, same flow. But as you do customizations, all that occurs is you create the customization. You don't have to get the binaries. You don't have to get all the basic vanilla stuff. You don't have to get the hot fixes. You push it up in an asset library. You push it down into the cloud environment. Then you push it down into the channel separately. That's the goal. Okay. Q&A. Who's got it?
Not me.
And if anybody wasn't awake, now you are. Okay. All right. Any questions?
So I had probably this is a great forum to get some feedback as well. So what do you guys see as the challenges for people adopting this RSSU? Because I talked to a few guys, and some people raised questions about the cost of the certificate which has to be used. So is that a widespread thought here? Like, is there any other things you think that people might hold back from using this the way we have built it?
What happens if the RSSU fails?
When you say fails, what do you mean?
I don't know, just throw a Coke on it, it gets nuked.
Ah.
And then motherboard failure.
Absolutely. And this goes to your redundancy and all sorts of fun things like that, and obviously failovers. It's a big question mark, really, for the customer at that level. You know, from a retail cloud scale unit perspective, obviously it's on us. From a store scale unit perspective, it's kind of on the customer / partner. The recommendation, first off, is lock that computer away. You know, put it somewhere secure, because
The short answer is there's no failover.
there's no failover from our perspective, which is yes.
Is there any reason why you couldn't install that scale unit in a SQL cluster?
Absolutely.
And an IS load balance set of
Again, it would be some manual steps, but yes, you're correct.
so that customer needs to provide that level of redundancy in the store.
Right. It would come down to the customer. You're correct. So all up, though, the big keys are how much you think that's going to happen. Because there's still impause with offline. There's still the potential that you can have failover between machines, clusters, et cetera, et cetera. You can put it in a data center, on and on. Yeah. No, great question. The answer is no. So when you, that's a great question, thank you. So when you...
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, exactly. When you install a retail store scale unit and you use cloud point of sale on that store, it is expected that it will go to that channel database and that retail server. There is no mix. So it's one or the other, and that is a critical distinction. To work against the cloud environment? The alternative would be to have 2-channel profiles. So the question was, okay, let's say the RSSU goes down. What then? Like, how do my cloud point of sales start functioning in the cloud? Your cloud point of sale URL is still functional, so you can still reach that, which is the benefit. But then your channel profile will be wrong. So the easy update would be switch the channel profile for that store, and at least that will function for the time being. Your data is all kind of wonky, and there's some fun in that regard, but this goes back to the original question of where's your data redundancy and where's your failover? Others?
Somebody had a question here? Mary, did you have a question? Yeah.
The answer is no. These are so yeah. I'm going to be great at this all day. I know, right? The question was loopback. If you install point of sale or use anything on the same box as the retail store scale unit, do you still have to manually do loopback? And the answer is yes. There is no fix for that. We're not personally ourselves going to put that in. Loopback being kind of a registry key just to fix really mostly. The reason for that is the security concepts. That the original idea is that your retail store scale unit should be a slightly beefier box, separated out, secured, made sure so that from a security perspective, you're not going to have this issue. In the back. Yes. So the question was of, especially for larger customers, that you're not going to get Azure admin accounts. It's not going to happen. They're going to hold those off, and they're going to give you some kind of corner account where they tell you to go play and have fun. So in the meantime, the commentary would be you would want their IT then, with their admins, to run this the first time. Because once it's run initially, all of the configuration is generated. You can do everything in operations, et cetera, et cetera. You can create all these client IDs and secrets. And then the end result is you just have to run it once in store to make sure that it gets generated for that actual store, installed for that actual store. As I had mentioned, the commentary is run before you walk. We wanted to get this out because people were begging for it. That is a huge point that we are currently focused on.
Yeah.
Between certificates and the admin account. Those are the big two keys that we want to fix. I see. So the commentary was the potential extra cost regarding all the web applications that must be generated. Now, on the upside, from a web application perspective, we're not actually using the web application. What we're really using is the security from it. So it's mostly effectively redirection at that level. The downside is, you're absolutely right, there is a potential cost involved. I don't actually know what that cost is. Do we have...
Most of the Dynamics 365 subscriptions come with the AD Premium, which covers this. But I can double check on that and let you know if there is any additional cost component on that. So once you have the AD Premium, that means all this number of AD users you create and the number of apps you create, there is a huge limit. So you are pretty much easily covered for it. You're not going to have like 100,000 stores. So. It's kind of similar to what we are doing for creating the AD accounts. Like, see, today if you want to log into the Rainier HQ, right, you need to have an AD account to log into that, right? And that basically your federated account, which is logged in through the AD, right? And you are creating that AD account as part of if, let's say, if the customer does not have that AD account, he has to create that AD account, and that is covered as part of the dynamic subscription as well. And if you want to create new users and map them to the new AD accounts, that's also covered. Same thing we do for device activation as well. We create the workers, we create the AD accounts, and we map them. So all those are actually part of the subscription itself. There is no additional cost component in that. So what we need to clarify with you is what is that upper limit. And I'm sure that upper limit is pretty high, because for users, there is like at least a limit of over multiple thousands of users you can create. So similar, I can double check on that web app limit, and I can let you know.
From a utilization perspective, what we're using Azure for is service to service auth. So once that token is generated, the secret has been accepted, and you get access and authentication and authorization into your environment, that communication is now direct, and Azure effectively drops out for that moment. So there's not much in terms of a utilization concept in that sense. It's more just they function as a security endpoint.
Yeah. As Jared mentioned, currently we don't have the programmatic ability of creating these applications and retrieving the certificates, right? Because they want to keep the security very tight for AD. They don't want. So even if you generate this secret, you have to copy it right away from that portal itself, right? You cannot just email it or whatever that is. So that's the way they've built it. So we are kind of bound by their limitation. That's why we want to we have this manual step of somebody having to go and do it. If you have an option, then probably would want to actually do it programmatically from within the context of AX. Yes.
Sorry, I have a doubt. So when I set up the stuff for my demo environment here, I have my Azure subscription.
Mm-hmm.
I can do whatever I want inside the Azure portal, right? Now, in the concept of software as service, I mean, those steps, they would be performed by the customer, in the sense of by Microsoft.
Definitely not by Microsoft.
No, because if you see the maintenance of the environment, in the concept of software as service, you have a DSC would perform a lot of steps that typically in the past were performed by the customer, by the partner.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding what it is you're saying. So let me get this straight. You're saying if we moved to software as a service, you would want us to be able to handle all of the Azure piece? Is that what you're asking?
Just a question. Those steps you mentioned now, those are performed by the customer organization? Or?
Today, they are performed by the customer/partner. The expectation would be the partner would know these steps and be able to work with the customer to make sure everything is achieved and correct prior to actual production and installation. Yep. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Oh, we got one more. Oh, yes, please. You heard it. He's my witness. Thank you very much.
We hope that you say the same thing about RSSU as well.
My hope is that, wait, is Balaji here? I need a promotion. Where are you at? All right. Well, thank you guys. We really appreciate it. If you need anything else, we'll be here all day.
Yeah, sure.